The lock clicked, but no matter how many times I turned the key, it wouldn't budge. At first, I figured it was just a glitch. I pulled out my phone and opened the app for my smart lock. Nothing. The screen was blank. No signal, no response. Confused, I reached for my backup keycard. Still nothing. Then I leaned in for a closer look, and my stomach dropped. The entire smart lock system had been yanked out and replaced with a cheap, metal deadbolt. The kind you'd see on some rundown storage unit. Right in the center of my door, taped like some official notice, was a piece of paper. It had the HOA's letterhead and a ridiculous statement. Your home access has been revoked due to multiple violations. Violations I had never been told about, never seen, never even imagined could exist. I just stood there stunned, locked out of my own home. It was humiliating. I could feel eyes on me. Across the street, I spotted curtains shift. A neighbor made eye contact, then quickly vanished from view. This wasn't just about a lock. Someone had gone into my house, without permission, and ripped out my entry system while I was at work. And I already knew exactly who had the nerve to pull something like this. That day had started out like any other. I'd made my coffee, fed my cat, Pixel, and headed off to work at the security firm where I handle systems analysis. My job? Designing secure networks and physical access systems for high-profile clients. Some of them even work with the government. So yeah, if anyone knows how access works, how to grant it, how to deny it, it's me. Which made this whole thing even more ridiculous. Someone thought they could outsmart me. At my own house. There was only one person with the ego and the guts to try it. Cheryl Morgan, the self-appointed queen of our HOA. She's always had a problem with me. Too many wires. Too many blinking lights on my power cabinet. Too much independence. Over the last few months, her need to control every inch of the neighborhood had gone from annoying to aggressive. I'd gotten a few snarky letters about my tech box out front, not visually appropriate, or whatever. But it was legal. It was discreet. I even responded politely. Guess that wasn't enough for Cheryl. I took a deep breath and walked away from the door. No yelling. No banging. No calls to the cops, at least not yet. I'm used to systems. And this? This was just another one to take apart. I drove to a nearby cafe and set up with my laptop. First thing I checked, camera feeds. Offline. No surprise there. But I designed the system to back up automatically to an encrypted cloud server. Within minutes, I was watching a video of Cheryl, right in front of my door, in broad daylight. She was pointing and giving instructions while some guy in a nondescript work van ripped out my smart lock. Her voice came through clear, thanks to the hidden mic I'd tucked in the outdoor planter. She told him exactly how to disable the internal wiring. Even said, make it look legal enough so he doesn't have a case. I actually laughed. They had no idea who they were messing with. I thought about going straight to the police. But Cheryl would hide behind HA nonsense and drown it in paperwork. This needed more than just revenge. It needed strategy. I started making calls, friends in law, cybersecurity, people who know how to handle things quietly and with precision. I logged all the metadata, the timestamps, the full-res backups. And then I called a locksmith, not to break in, but to prepare for a proper, documented re-entry. That night, I stayed at my buddy Miguel's place. Had some dinner, acted like everything was fine. Meanwhile, back in the neighborhood, Cheryl was already rewriting the narrative. According to her, I'd violated HOA, visual standards, and was using illegal surveillance. She even claimed there'd been an emergency vote giving the HOA power to restrict access to any home in violation. Total fiction. Most of the neighbors didn't know better. Some just nodded along because they didn't want to deal with her. What they didn't know. There was no vote. No paperwork. No policy. Cheryl was just winging it. She thought she was untouchable. That was about to change. I kept digging. The emails supposedly used to vote for my lockout? Yeah, something about them felt off right away. They all looked eerily similar, and two of them ended in .info instead of the usual .org domain our HOA uses. That was my first red flag. So, I checked the domain registrations. Both were created just 3 weeks ago. And guess what? They were registered to a private proxy service. Classic move when someone's trying to hide their tracks. I ran a trace using one of my custom diagnostic tools. No surprise, both email addresses looped right back to the same IP range tied to Cheryl's home network. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen, and this slow grin spread across my face. She hadn't just bent the rules, she straight up committed digital forgery. On an HOA system, no less. That alone could get her removed, and depending on how it played out, it might even be criminal. I backed up everything, saved the evidence on multiple encrypted drives, and sent a full copy to my lawyer. Then I called up Riley, an old college friend who works in digital forensics. He's consulted on a few HOA fraud cases before. When I gave him the rundown, he laughed for a solid minute. Then he said, "I'll help. This is too good to pass up." He promised me a technical report on the domain spoofing and the timestamp weirdness within the week. I knew I'd have it in 24 hours. That afternoon, I headed back to the HOA clubhouse. I wasn't there to argue. I just wanted the official meeting minutes that supposedly gave them permission to lock me out. Cheryl wasn't there this time. Instead, I ran into Lindsay, a younger board member who looked like she wanted to be anywhere else. She handed me a folder and tried not to make eye contact. I flipped through the documents quickly. Just as I thought, vague, generic phrasing like resident safety and unauthorized equipment. Nothing specific. Nothing that even mentioned me by name. I looked at her and asked, real calm, "Did you vote to change my lock?" She paused, looked down, and slowly shook her head. Then she whispered, "I didn't even know it happened until afterward." And there it was. Confirmation. Cheryl had either forged votes or pressured the others to stay quiet once it was done. I left the clubhouse and crossed the parking lot to the community bulletin board. If there really was a resolution passed, it would be posted here. Nothing. No emergency access policy, no public vote, no new bylaws. Just flyers for a lawn care discount and an Easter egg hunt. On my way back to the car, I ran into Mr. Halverson, an old retired engineer who's been living here for over 20 years. He gave me this knowing look and said under his breath, "This isn't the first time Cheryl's pulled something shady. Apparently, a few months ago, she fined someone for having a bird feeder. When they pushed back, their landscaping permit mysteriously got delayed, until they caved." I thanked him and kept walking. The cracks in Cheryl's little empire were starting to show. That night, I got to work. I activated what's called a honeypot, a fake Wi-Fi network named something tempting like HOA access control. It looked just insecure enough to bait someone into poking around. And if Cheryl, or anyone on her behalf, tried again, they'd think they'd found my real system. But this thing? It was isolated, totally safe, and rigged to record everything. Every device, every login attempt, even typing speed. Within 2 hours, someone bit. An old Android tablet connected. Outdated firmware, clunky interface. It probed for access, tried a few basic passwords, then uploaded a script named access_override.js. I watched the whole thing in real time. The IP? Yep, traced straight back to the HOA clubhouse. But this wasn't just trespassing anymore. Now I had proof of unauthorized surveillance, digital tampering, and an active attempt to break into a private system. Later that night, I swung by the clubhouse and spotted lights on in the back. From the shadows, I used my zoom lens to snap some pictures. There he was, Ethan, Cheryl's son, sitting at a desk with the same Android tablet, wearing a headset, flipping through documents. One of those pages had my name bolded across the top. This wasn't just meddling. They were building a case, or at least a cover story. Then came the cherry on top. I got an email from an anonymous sender, concerned.resident124@something.com. It had a screenshot of a group chat between Cheryl and other board members. She was bragging about removing the tech nuisance and called me a threat to the visual purity of the neighborhood. That was the exact kind of language that would raise eyebrows, especially if shown to the right people. I replied with one line, "Thank you. You've helped more than you know." Then I archived the chat, copied it to my growing evidence folder, and labeled it Cheryl Case. This wasn't about a door anymore. This was about power, control, and digital arrogance piled up like a wobbly stack of cards. And I already knew which one to pull to bring it all down. I sat in my home office that night, lights low, monitor casting a soft blue glow. The honeypot kept logging every move. Every keystroke, every file request, recorded. Whoever was snooping didn't realize how loud they were being. Their device ID had been fingerprinted. Even their typing style was logged, fast, messy, all over the place. The kind of behavior you see when someone's in over their head. There was one file I had placed in the honeypot on purpose, ho__codes.txt. Any experienced hacker would know that file was bait. But Ethan? He downloaded it. That single click triggered a location ping. Confirmed everything. The tablet was still inside the HOA clubhouse. They were practically outing themselves. But I wasn't ready to report it yet. Not yet. This wasn't about catching them red-handed. It was about making sure the case was airtight. I printed out the logs, screenshots, and device connections, stapled them all together into a folder labeled Phase 2, and tucked it into a drawer with a flash drive backup. If they ever tried to erase the trail, I'd still have enough to burn them down with just one file. The next morning, I walked back into the neighborhood in broad daylight. No more sneaking around. I passed Cheryl's house on purpose. Gave her a polite nod. She froze mid-step, standing in her flower bed with a garden trowel, and gave me this stiff, forced nod back. No clipboard this time. No smug smile. Just unease. I didn't say a word. Instead, I spent the afternoon at a print shop. I made a single flyer. Big bold letters at the top. Do you know what your HOA board is really doing? At the bottom, I included a link. It pointed to a folder with all the documents, fake votes, tampered footage, and illegal actions laid out with full context. I didn't flood the neighborhood. I didn't tape it to every door. I just posted one copy, right on the community bulletin board next to the HOA calendar. Then I went home. No drama. No confrontation. Just bait. And just like with the honeypot, someone took it. Later that evening, my hosting service pinged me. The documents were downloaded 3 times in 15 minutes, all from within the neighborhood. One of them? Lindsay. The other 2, probably residents. An hour later, I got a text from an unknown number. I didn't vote for anything. She's lying to all of us. I smiled. That was all I needed. But Cheryl wasn't done. Later that night, the honeypot caught another connection. This time, the device name was k.whitmore_pat. It matched her digital fingerprint exactly. She tried logging into a fake dashboard, probably looking for something she could twist against me. All she found were decoy logs designed to look suspicious. And that was the point. She clicked through every tab like she was hunting for something, not realizing each click triggered more tracking scripts, all quietly sending data straight to my server. When she tried downloading a file labeled resident_surveillance_plans.pdf, it set off a silent alert. I watched it all play out in real time, her digging through the decoy system, clearly desperate to find something she could twist into justification. What she didn't know. Her tablet hadn't muted its mic. My code had flipped on audio recording the second she opened the site. I caught her voice, clear as day, saying things like, "This'll shut him up," and "we'll say it was a safety threat." She had delivered the evidence herself, layered on top of surveillance footage, fake logs, and digital forgeries. The next morning, I went downtown to Riley's office. He'd spent the last 2 days putting together a full forensic report. And man, it was brutal. The domain trickery? Sloppy. The timestamps? Altered with basic editing software. The fake vote logs? Obvious forgeries. And get this, those fake HOA email domains? Registered through a proxy, but the payment method tied back to Cheryl's own billing address. Because she reused the same recovery email for her bogus board accounts and a coupon app. Riley nearly cried laughing when he found it. I bundled everything into a presentation. Clearflow. Sharp visuals. Side-by-side comparisons of legit versus forged documents. And, of course, the audio clips of Cheryl's own words. I uploaded it all to a private link and scheduled an email blast to every resident in the HOA directory, Friday, 7 p.m. sharp. Prime time. Right when folks start winding down and checking their inboxes. At the end of the message, I added one final line. I was locked out, but now we all deserve to know who holds the key. Before Friday came, I had one last stop to make. This time, I walked into the HOA clubhouse with my lawyer and a representative from the county housing department. They'd reviewed the evidence I submitted and found enough to justify an investigation. Cheryl was there, and the second she saw us walk in, her whole face dropped. My lawyer handed her a printed copy of the complaint and let her know a formal case was being filed. She tried to argue, but the county rep cut her off with one sentence. Until this is resolved, you're suspended from all HOA duties. I didn't say a word, just watched. That night, I sat on the couch with Pixel curled up next to me and watched my inbox light up. Residents were stunned, furious. A few were even embarrassed for ever siding with Cheryl. Some demanded a new election. Others asked if she could be charged. A few even wanted me to take over the HOA board. I didn't respond. Not right away. I wasn't looking for power. I just wanted peace. I leaned back, let out a long breath, and stared at the ceiling. Every file she opened, every arrogant decision she made trying to control me, it all led her right into a trap she triggered herself. And now, she wasn't just losing her seat, she was watching her entire illusion of control fall apart. By Saturday morning, the neighborhood was in chaos. That email? It hit like a lightning bolt. Some folks were holding emergency meetings within minutes. Others were walking door to door, passing around printed reports like they were hot off the press. Cheryl's carefully built image, the tough but fair community leader? Gone. Blown apart by raw evidence and her own mistakes. Some neighbors were shocked by her recorded voice. Others were outraged over the rigged votes and bogus violations. But the real gut punch? Realizing they'd been ruled by someone who only cared about power, not fairness. I laid low that day, even though my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages, thank yous, even one neighbor I barely knew who dropped off a homemade pie with a note that said, "Sorry for ever doubting you." I didn't gloat. I just nodded, thanked them, and kept going. Because I wasn't done, not until the last lock clicked shut. The digital evidence was enough to start the fire. But Cheryl needed more than just a neighborhood reckoning. She needed legal consequences. The kind that would make sure she could never do this again. And I still had one last move. Sunday afternoon, a code enforcement inspector showed up, quietly, no notice. It was based on the complaint my lawyer had filed. I stayed parked across the street, watching from my car as the inspector made rounds with a clipboard. He caught everything. Improperly stored paint cans. Exposed wiring near the fuse box. A storage closet packed with flammable junk. But the kicker? A folder on the table titled Emergency Lockout Authority. Inside? Pages of fake policies, stamped with a logo that didn't match the official HOA documents. When the inspector asked about it, the other board members admitted they'd never seen those files before. Cheryl had turned her office into a personal command center, making up rules, inventing policies, and enforcing them like law. The inspector didn't waste time. He issued citations on the spot and shut down all clubhouse administrative operations until further review. Cheryl wasn't even there. She was holed up inside her house, blinds drawn, phone off, probably realizing the walls were closing in faster than she could spin new lies. News of the citations spread just as fast as the digital report had. Neighbors who once stayed silent started questioning everything, every fine, every letter, every supposed rule. An older couple stood up during a spontaneous neighborhood gathering and shared how Cheryl had made them remove their porch swing years ago, claiming it was a safety hazard. Turns out, it wasn't. The board, backed into a corner, called for an emergency vote of no confidence. Within 48 hours, Cheryl was removed from the board. Officially. Her name wiped from the records. Her authority gone. But I wasn't finished yet. I wanted to make sure she didn't regroup and crawl back into a position of power later through some backdoor trick. That meant public accountability. With help from my lawyer, I filed a civil suit. Charges included invasion of privacy, unlawful entry, defamation, and digital fraud. I didn't want money. The lawsuit gave me access to formal discovery, which meant Cheryl's devices and records would be examined. Every deleted email. Every fake document. Every message she and Ethan had exchanged while fabricating their story? Now all of it would become public record. It also kicked off a deeper review by the HOA's parent association at the state level. They sent reps to conduct interviews, review local governance, and make sure everything complied with data laws. The moment Cheryl and her son faked domains and altered records, they crossed into a different territory, one that could land them in real legal trouble. And here's the kicker. One afternoon, I got a call from Riley. He was practically out of breath with excitement. Turns out, Ethan had used a government-issued discount to buy surveillance tools for their operation. Tools that were supposed to be restricted to schools and public programs. He'd even faked credentials, used a borrowed identity to pull it off. Riley said it best. They're not just shooting themselves in the foot. They're marching blindfolded through a minefield. I thanked Riley for the discovery and passed everything straight to my lawyer, who added it to our growing court file. The judge moved fast, set a preliminary hearing for later that week. When the day came, Cheryl walked in wearing formal clothes, trying to look composed. Her lawyer trailed behind her, looking like he'd just been dragged into a mess way over his head. Cheryl didn't make eye contact with anyone. I walked in with just a slim binder and a flash drive. Collected. When the judge asked if I had any opening evidence, I queued up a short clip from the audio recording. Cheryl's voice came through clearly. We'll say it was a safety threat. Then, her giving instructions to disable the smart lock. That was all the judge needed to hear. He immediately ordered the case to proceed with full discovery, stating on record that the evidence strongly suggested civil misconduct and possibly criminal charges. After court, I walked out without saying a word. Cheryl didn't say anything either. She looked smaller somehow, like the weight of being exposed had finally started to settle on her shoulders. No smug look, no clipboard, just silence. Outside, a few neighbors were waiting. Folks who'd followed the case quietly clapped me on the back. I've never seen anyone take on an entire corrupt HOA and win, one said. I smiled, not because I enjoyed the attention, but because, finally, it was over. The system that once locked me out? It had turned against the one who abused it. Every door Cheryl slammed in people's faces? Now swinging back hard. And I made sure the hinges wouldn't ever be the same again. The neighborhood had started to change. With Cheryl's name officially removed from the board, it felt like someone had opened a window and let the air back in. The place felt lighter. People who used to live in quiet fear of citations and made-up rules were finally relaxing. Flower pots showed up on porches again. Porch swings came back. Even a few lawn gnomes made a comeback, despite Cheryl's old ban on ornamental clutter. Folks smiled more. Doors stayed open longer. And me? I stuck to my rhythm. I never wanted the spotlight, but it followed me now, everywhere I went. Still, I treated it like everything else, with a calm mind and a steady hand. This was never about power. It was about justice. And that part? It was almost complete. But there was one more thing to do. As discovery in the civil case moved forward, we uncovered more than I could have hoped. Emails between Cheryl and Ethan included receipts for illegal surveillance gear, forged board resolutions, and even drafts of violation letters with blank names, ready to be filled out and printed. The most damning? A voice memo where Cheryl said to her son, "If we can't make him move, we'll make him miserable." That sentence became the headline of our final legal summary. After reviewing all the evidence, the judge didn't just recommend full restitution. He referred the case to the district attorney for possible criminal charges, document forgery, digital fraud, illegal entry, the works. The message was clear: Cheryl's reign of fake authority was over. As the story picked up traction in local media, I started getting emails and calls from people across the state. Other neighborhoods. Other residents dealing with their own overreaching HOAs. They wanted advice: how to protect their systems, how to organize, how to fight back smart. Some even offered to pay me for consultations. Others just thanked me for proving these neighborhood tyrants weren't invincible. I helped where I could, but I always kept the focus on the same thing: truth, not chaos. Documentation, not drama. Strategy, not noise. Back home, the community held a special election to form a new board. Folks kept pushing me to run. Every time I said the same thing. I just want to live in peace. Instead, I nominated Mrs. Jenkins, a retired school principal known for being firm but fair. She won almost unanimously. Under her leadership, the board shifted its focus to transparency. They launched a shared online portal where meeting minutes were posted in real time. Any resident could submit a proposal or concern without fear of retaliation. Violation notices? Now they came with photos, timestamps, and a clear appeal process. No more mystery letters. No more threats left on doorsteps in the dark. A week after the new board was sworn in, they hosted a community potluck. I showed up, reluctantly at first, but slowly eased into the scene. People came up to thank me. Over barbecue ribs and cold lemonade, they shook my hand. Kids ran by laughing. And for the first time in months, I saw the neighborhood the way I had when I first moved in, full of potential. A few residents asked if I'd ever consider teaching a digital security workshop. I told them, maybe. They lit up like I just promised them the moon. That night, I walked home as the sun dipped low, casting gold across the rooftops. It was quiet, but the good kind of quiet. Cheryl, meanwhile, had gone dark. Her once manicured yard had turned messy and overgrown. The woman who used to walk the street with a measuring tape now stayed inside with her curtains drawn and her mailbox overflowing. The new HOA board sent her a formal notice to remove her unauthorized surveillance gear. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. Public records showed she was under investigation by the state HOA Compliance Bureau and facing criminal charges for forgery. Ethan had left town, probably to stay ahead of whatever was coming. The empire they built on fake authority collapsed, and now it stood as a warning for everyone else. My home had become the safest one on the block. Not just because of the tech, but because people knew now, if you tried something shady around here, it wouldn't stay hidden for long. The cameras, sensors, off-site backups, they all ran quietly in the background. I didn't need to think about them anymore. One evening, I installed the last piece of my upgraded system, a discrete voice panel with facial recognition. That night, I walked up to my front door. The panel scanned my face, gave a soft ping, and said, "Welcome back, Ryan." It wasn't just a gadget. It was a reminder, this home was mine again, in every way that mattered. As spring slid into summer, I kept working from home. Every morning started with coffee and Pixel curled up beside my keyboard. Sometimes I'd glance at the corner of my screen, the live porch feed steady, untouched. No surprise visits. No threats taped to my door. And not because people were afraid, but because they respected the line now. Word had spread. I wasn't just another guy with a smart home. I was the one who got locked out of his own house, and still beat the people who thought they held the keys. Every door I walk through opens on my terms. One afternoon, Mrs. Jenkins stopped by with a thank you basket and an envelope. Inside was a letter, signed by dozens of residents, thanking me for everything. Tucked in with it? A certificate naming me honorary advisor to the HOA board. No voting power. No real title. Just the way I like it. I pinned the letter to my wall and slid the certificate into a drawer. I didn't need it framed. My satisfaction didn't come from recognition. It came from knowing I reclaimed what was mine and helped others do the same. As the streetlights flicked on and the sky shifted from amber to deep blue, I stood on my porch, arms crossed, watching the neighborhood settle into something it hadn't been in a long time, peaceful. No systems to fix. No intrusions to trace. No battles left to fight. Just a breeze in the air, the sound of kids on bikes down the street, and the soft, solid click of a front door that now locks and unlocks only for me.